in the recruitment industry one way or another. I started off in sort of sales roles, worked my way through to sort of middle management level. Hired a lot of staff. Ended up sort of doing some transformational work, turning around businesses, that sort of stuff. Ended up as in recruitment. Did that for about 6 years. Did everything from junior temp recruitment all the way through to senior exec headhunting. So I've sort of done headhunting work at board level, and everything in between. Recruited into finance, risk, compliance, IT, all sorts of different areas. Ended up managing 3 teams across London, setting up divisions for Europe's leading recruitment business. And then decided to leave all that behind and set up this business, which I did in 2006. And oh gosh, it was just me at the time, and now we've got 15 of us. So since 2006, we've grown quite strongly. We have a reputation in our industry. We're not the biggest. I think we're about 3rd biggest, but we certainly have a reputation for being the highest quality provider out there, and we pride ourselves on that. If you talk to any of my CV writers, they'll tell you that I'm very passionate. I say to all these guys, if you ain't world class, I don't want you working for me. Everything you do should be world class, from every CV you write to every communication with our customers. And that's the mantra we have within our organization. Got a team of real senior folks over here, senior execs, retired chief execs. We've got a guy who used to be a senior headhunter for some of the big companies. We've got someone who was an IT program director, a couple of people who are former MDs. I've got some people from IT backgrounds, and then I've got another bunch of people who are from more of a sort of certified trained coaching and CV writing background. So we know the hot skills in your marketplace, and it's our combined knowledge that allows us to write really good CVs. So our knowledge and the way we write our CVs is it comes from 4 or 5 different areas. It's our kind of combined knowledge of each and every industry. That's important. But we do loads and loads of research, both primary and secondary research, which is really, really important. So we know what the trends are in the marketplace. We know what recruiters and employers are looking for. We also base our CVs on marketing principles, because it is a sales and marketing document at the end of the day. And also, it's about the psychology of how people read documents. So that's really a little bit of background about us. The reason we do that at the start is just so you guys have a bit of confidence in what we're talking about, really. So let's start talking about what is a CV. Might be a slightly strange question to start with, but I think a lot of people get the wrong end of the stick. I think historically, people have often seen a CV as being a list of where you've worked, with half a dozen bullet points underneath each job describing what you've done. So a list of duties and responsibilities, a list of education, a list of contact details. All that stuff should be in the CV, don't get me wrong, but if that's all your CV is, it's definitely not going to be hitting the mark. It's a little bit like if our website was just a list of products and a little description of each product next to it with a price. Would you buy from that website? Of course you wouldn't. Why would you? You want to know about us, where our knowledge comes from. You want to know why you should buy our services, and so on and so forth. It's exactly the same with a CV. You can't just say, well, I've worked here and this is what I did in each role, and expect people to get excited about that. One of the things I find quite fascinating is there's a huge disconnect between what job seekers think they should put on their CV and what employers and recruiters want. Huge disconnect. It's almost astonishing how different the documents people send from the documents people want to receive. And I think part of the reason is due to all this misinformation that you can find on the internet. Most of the articles on the internet, guys, are written by search engine optimization consultants. I know we had this issue when we wanted to be further up on the Google rankings. The company that we were talking to said, well, what we'll do is we'll write 6 articles about CV writing, and we'll stuff it full of keywords, put your website address in there somewhere, and beam it out across the World Wide Web. I'm like, okay, well, that's great, but what do you guys know about CV writing? Oh, nothing. That doesn't matter. We just want to get the articles out there full of keywords linking back to your website. And I'm like, well, that's all well and good, but what about the poor souls who are reading this information? They might think that it's the right thing to do. Oh, we don't care about them. I'm like, well, I do. And I'm not putting my name to it. So if you want to do this, fine. I'll write the damn articles. You can pop a few extra keywords in it, and then you can send it out. But we all have a responsibility to make sure that the World Wide Web is full of good information, not nonsensical stuff written by search engine optimization consultants. And that's a real issue. Half the information out there is just utter rubbish written by people who don't have the faintest idea about what they're talking about. One of the issues you might want to think about is how many employers are now asking people to fill out application forms. I did some consultancy work for a firm recently who basically approached me and said, look, Matt, we just cannot find the right people. What's going wrong? The CVs we're receiving are just rubbish. We don't know whether these people are good, bad, or indifferent. What can we do? And I said, well, the first thing you can do is get yourself a decent application form and dictate to the job seekers what information they're giving you. Then and only then will you have the right information to make decent shortlisting decisions. So that's what they've done, and it's really helped. But this is the point I come back to. If CVs were genuinely providing people with the information they needed, why are they asking you to supplement that with an application form? The answer's obvious. Okay, good. Another issue, I don't know about you guys, but I know a lot of people are still using the same format they did when they left school or college or university. Some people are still using the same format and they're 20 years into their career. Things move on, things evolve. What worked with regards to CVs even 5 years ago isn't working now, never mind 10, 15, 20 years ago. We have a little bit of a motto here. What we say to people is that a CV should present a business case that explains why someone should hire you. I reviewed somebody's CV today. I suspect they are actually quite a good candidate. Had some good experience, but I said to him, look, I've read your entire CV. And from reading your CV, you've obviously done some pretty good stuff, but I don't know whether you're a good candidate, a bad candidate, or somewhere in between, because all you've done is told me where you've worked and what you did in each of those roles. That doesn't tell me that you did it well. It doesn't tell me you did it badly. It just leaves me wondering. So I said to the guy, I said, if I was wearing my recruiter's hat, I would put you on the maybe or no pile, because you've given me no reason to think that you're good at what you do. And I'm not telepathic, so how am I going to know? You could be the best guy out there, but how do I know that from reading your CV? And it was almost like the penny was dropping. He was like, yeah, you're right. People aren't telepathic. How are they going to know if I don't tell them? And I could hear the cogs turning, and it was like, gosh, a revelation. But to me, it's the most obvious thing in the world. Nobody's going to know how good you are unless you tell them. So you can tell people till you're blue in the face that within my role, I did this, I was responsible for that, I did that, I was responsible for the other. But that doesn't tell people that you did it well. So this whole concept of having a business case is all about having a very evidence-based document that doesn't just tell people what you did, but it tells them the benefits of the work that you did. So you make it very evidence-based, and it becomes a proper business case that explains why someone should hire you. Okay, good. So I guess you could say a bad CV is a list, a good CV is a business case. The other thing you need to have in your CV, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, is you need to make sure, although I've just bitched about search engine optimization consultants and using keywords to get further up in the Google rankings, which has its place, of course, but you actually need to do the same thing with your CV. Keywords, make sure that your CV comes up in keyword searches. I'm going to drop some little nuggets in at the bottom of each page, some interesting statistics that you might find fascinating. But the industry average is that people who buy professional CV writing services, and I'm talking about proper CV writing services here, not these little 30, 40, 50 quid CV editing services, but those people who buy proper CV writing services, on average, will get around a 33-34% uplift in the number of interviews they're getting. That's proven by, that's the industry statistic there. From our research, and it's slightly anecdotal, I'll give you that, but we reckon our customers on average are going to get about a 50% uplift. Okay, good. So let's have a look. I'm going to show you a couple of CVs on screen before I go into this first slide. This is what we call our Get Started CV. Essentially speaking, this is all the essential stuff that you need on your CV. So a little professional summary at the top. I'm going to show you how you can beef that out and make it more powerful, but at the very least you need something that tells the world what you are and sets the scene for the CV. You need a key skills section, and we'll talk about this, but this is the section that search engine optimizes your CV. You need a career history. Of course you do, that's obvious. You need achievements, and more achievements, and more achievements. The more achievements you can get into your CV, the better. And then your job before that, and more achievements. I'm often heard in the office saying, a CV without achievements is like a car without wheels. It ain't going anywhere. I probably say that 10 times a day to our customers, but it's absolutely so true. Earlier career, education, training, memberships, all that kind of stuff, personal details at the end. That is kind of, I suppose, your sort of bare minimum. Now, it's not just about the framework there. It's about what you're writing each section that's important. So it's very easy to show you a template. I know people who go out and buy templates off the internet and think that that's going to be the difference between getting interviews or not. Well, look, let's face it, having a well-presented CV is a pretty good idea. I'm not going to deny that. But is it well written? But more importantly, is it saying the right things? It's what it says, it's the content, it's the message that's the most important thing. I've seen some really fancy doodle-dandy websites which look amazing, and they might even be quite well written. But the message they're sending out to the market is way off the mark and no one buys from those websites. It's all about the content. Let me show you a different CV. This is what we call our professional level CV, which starts off with a much more robust summary. And we're going to talk about that in detail shortly. We then have this key skills or expertise section. We're going to talk about that in detail shortly. We also have these case studies on page 1. Wow, guys, what's case studies all about? Let me tell you this, and I'll go into this in more detail in a bit, but anybody who is in marketing, there might even be some marketeers out there on the call tonight, but anybody in marketing will tell you that the current trend in marketing is to wrap sales messages up in stories, because what stories do is they help people to conceptualize and contextualize the message you're delivering. This is what we're trying to do through these little case studies on page 1, to showcase your biggest achievements you've had in your career. Same career history with loads of achievements, and then the same sections at the end, and then we'll talk about this, recommendations, really, really powerful. Looks a bit grainy, this, in our interview, in our webinar platform. It looks a lot nicer as a nice clean PDF, but anyway, you get the general gist. So let's go back to the presentation. So what we're going to do now is going to talk in detail about how to create a really good professional summary. Okay, so this is all about getting people's attention in 5 seconds. Have you heard that before, guys? You've got to get someone's attention in 5 seconds. I've even heard someone saying the other day, recruiters spend 10 seconds reading your CV. I think that's a bit skinny. We've looked into the research on this, and we reckon about 40 seconds on average is what people are spending reading a CV. But of course, some of those CVs just get dismissed within 1 second. Some of them are read for a couple of minutes, and you take the average. The reason some of those CVs don't get read at all is because they're not engaging with the reader in line 1. Some people call this a personal profile. How many of you guys have got a personal profile on your CV? Okay, good. And there's nothing wrong with that, guys, so don't worry about it. But I think calling it a personal profile leads you down the wrong path, because what it does is it starts, you start thinking about personality, personality, and that starts you off thinking about all these things about being dynamic and being a self-starter and having good attention to detail and about being able to work under pressure, and the worst one of all, being able to work in a team as well as on my own. I read something from Michael Page the other day which I loved, and it was talking about all this: I can work well in a team as well as on my own, and I've got great attention to detail, and I can work well under pressure. And then it just said in big capital letters, "So what?" And that really resonated with me. When people say to me I can work well in a team, just the thought strikes me, well, why is that such a great thing? I mean, what's going to happen if you walk into a room with other people? Are you going to spontaneously combust? You know, it's just such a nonsensical thing when you actually analyse it. Now, if anybody's got that on their CV, this isn't a dig at you at all. I don't blame you for putting it on there. But if you actually analyse what you're saying, I mean, it's like saying I can clean my teeth or I can brush my hair. You know, I can work well on my own. I mean, blimey, my son can work well on his own, or at least play with his toys on his own. You know, it's nothing special. But people, I've seen chief executive officers putting that in their CV. It's awful. Recruiters really don't respond to it, and employers think it's awful. So just, if anybody has got that stuff in their CV, please get rid of it, okay? So don't call it a personal profile. Call it a professional summary and focus more on professional, harder skills. Sorry, I just turned my microphone off there. Let's just pretend we all wanted to go out and buy a pair of cheap red shoes. So what we do is we go onto the internet, we go onto Google or Bing or whatever, and we type in cheap red shoes. So what happens is we get all these search results. And let's just pretend a little advert pops up and says, "We sell shoes of all colours and all prices." We'd probably think to ourselves, okay, you probably sell cheap red shoes, but there's an advert over here that is simply saying we sell cheap red shoes. So I'm going to click that one because it's really more aligned with the search term that I put into Google or Bing or whatever. Now, it's the same when people recruit, isn't it? If I'm looking for a .NET developer, for example, or if I'm looking for an IT infrastructure manager, let's use that as an example. If somebody says to me that they're an IT professional with extensive experience across all areas of IT, now I'll probably think, well, yes, you probably have got some experience of managing IT infrastructure, but you've not said that specifically. Yet the guy over here has said that they're an IT infrastructure manager with a track record of delivering multi-million-pound IT infrastructure projects. I know for a fact that that person is what I'm looking for because they've told me. So I'm going to read that CV instead of the person who was hedging their bets. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to tell people what you are. So if you're a HR business partner, tell people that. If you're a Prince 2 qualified project manager, tell people that. If you're a chartered marketing manager, say that. But align it with the job that you're applying for. Okay, so that's the obvious, easy bit, really. Now we start to get a little bit more technical. This is where I start talking about value propositions. My marketing manager, when she first joined us, Carolyn, she got quite not cross with me, but a little bit frustrated with me because she just heard me talking about value propositions all the time. And she said, "Matt, I have no idea what you're talking about. What the heck is a value proposition?" She's a cheeky little beggar, is Carolyn, anyway, but we'll let her off of that. She's a good girl. But she said, "What's this value proposition thing?" I'm like, okay, look, don't worry about it. I'll tell you what, let's pretend you're a customer and I'm your CV writer. I want you to go away and have a think about all the things you're good at, and then come back. We'll do a session together. We did this over the phone, and I'll ask you some probing questions. You'll answer them, and from that, I'll figure out what your value proposition is. So off she went. That's what we did. And after about 20 minutes of her waffling, I said, "I've got it. What you are is you are a chartered an experienced marketing manager, and your value proposition is you've got a track record of developing low cost, we could even say recession busting, marketing strategies that deliver superior return on investment for SMEs. You know, she sat there and I could almost hear a little light bulb ping come on. And she's like, yeah, you're absolutely right. That is the common thread throughout my career. And it is. That's what Carolyn is really, really good at. That's what she's done throughout her entire career. She's developed low-cost marketing strategies, so developed marketing strategies on a very low budget that have delivered really good return on investment for the company she's worked for. And that's what she does for us. So that's what I mean by a value proposition. My value proposition might be something along the lines of being really good at developing personal branding documentation, including CVs and LinkedIn profiles that uplift my client's ability to find a job. Something like that. My wife's in the fitness industry. She might tell you that she's really good at developing leading edge exercise programs that enhance the performance of professional athletes. One of my CV writers, Andrew, who works in Miami in the US, he describes it as that one thing, the thing that kind of, you know, it stands out above everything else. It's that one thing, it's that reason why somebody would hire you. So that's what I mean by a value proposition. You could call it a does what it says on the tin statement if you like. Okay, good. So what you do next, and this is all still part of the professional summary, if I just go back and show you this on screen, we're still on this section here. If you're a senior person, call it an executive summary. If you're less senior, professional summary. But yeah, this is this bit here. So you've done the first line. Well, once you've done the first line, you've then got to go on and talk about other value-added skills that you have, almost the skills that support that value proposition, the skills that you have, the things that you're really good at that allow that value proposition to be realized. But it's important here to align these value-added skills with the hot skills in your marketplace. So don't just think of skills that you have and be very ethnocentric about it. I reviewed a CV today and I said to the person who'd written, I said, it feels like you've just written down a load of skills that you think you have. And they said, well, there, that's exactly what I did. I said, but did you think about the skills that your future employers are looking for? Oh gosh, no, I didn't do that. I'm like, well, okay, well, that's where marketing comes into it. It's all about presenting the skills. It's a little bit like if we were selling our CV writing services to a school leaver or a graduate, we would push different points than if we were selling it to a senior executive. The marketing message is different. It's like Frosties and cornflakes. Same product made by the same people, but one of them is aimed at kids with Tony the Tiger, and another one is aimed at adults with a different theme. But it's the same product. One of them's just got sugar on it and the other one hasn't. So you adjust it. You align those skills with the hot skills in your marketplace. So let me read you an example here. But by the way, just before I do that, you're all still awake? You're all still happy? You can use your little smileys and thumbs up and everything. I just want to make sure you're all there and you can hear me okay. Fabulous, brilliant. Okay, let me read you an example of a summary. So we describe this person as an experienced finance director with extensive board level experience. So it's pretty obvious, isn't it? There's no confusion there. If you're looking for a board level FD, well then you know you've found somebody who's along that road. So that's fine, good, excellent. What's their value proposition? Well, this person reckoned their value proposition was having a track record of embedding financial governance across organizations to protect cash flow and profit. Now, that's a pretty important thing to do as an FD, isn't it? Really, if that is the job, that's the purpose of a finance director. It's to embed financial governance across the business so it doesn't go bust. And that's precisely what this person described as being their value proposition. In fairness, this person didn't say that. they waffled on for 20 minutes like Carolyn did, but from their wafflings and down to our skills and ability to ask the right questions and direct the conversation appropriately, we were able to eke out that value proposition. And that's what we're really good at. You know, people don't just tell us this stuff and then all of a sudden we just write what they've told us. We're not writers, although we are, but by default, what we are is we're senior people who know what these things are. We know what we should be asking, and we know what should be in these CVs. And then we went on to say that this person was really good at assembling and managing finance teams of up to 20 people across international locations. They're also really good at leading capital appraisals and doing commercial feasibility analysis for mergers and acquisitions, new product development, and diversification. Now listen to the last two. The last two we've written in a features and benefits style. And this is quite important because the first two aren't, the last two are features and benefits, or skill and value add. Embedding financial ownership across management teams to drive superior budgetary performance. And the last one, leading major cost rationalization programs to remove costs from a business and drive profitability. And if we go back to the value proposition, embedding robust financial governance across organizations to protect cash flow and profitability. It's all about spelling out the benefits that you deliver. And that's what we mean about having an evidence-based CV, or a CV that presents a business case as to why someone should hire you. Now, of course, later on, we're going to back this up. We can't just say, I'm really good at all these things without backing it up. But this is all about having you're spoon feeding it. You're saying, look, if you hire me, I can do this and it will benefit you in this way. It's like marketing again. If we'd said to you, you should attend this webinar because you'll learn all about CVs, you'd probably think, well, that's not very good. But if we say you should attend this webinar because you'll learn all about leading edge techniques to write CVs, which will significantly enhance the number of interviews you're going to get and subsequently lead to lots of job offers, then all of a sudden you're thinking, right, now I see why I should attend. It's just basic marketing, You're giving people a reason to engage with you, and it's the same on the CV. All right, good. So word of caution here, don't just use random skills. As I said, align the skills with your marketplace, okay? Don't use fancy words over substance. Yeah, we're wordsmiths. When we write CVs for folks, we try to use the language you would expect as if someone was writing an MBA assignment. But it's not about the fancy words. It's about the message. It's about the content. Of course, this is where we earn our money. I always find it quite interesting that I did a session last night aimed at freelancers, contractors, and small business owners. And I said to these guys, I said, look, you all run small businesses, really, whether or not you're a freelancer, a contractor, or a small business owner. So a lot of you have websites, but your website is one part of it. In actual fact, for freelancers and contractors, probably your CV and your LinkedIn profile is more important. But I bet most of you guys have gone and spent thousands and thousands of pounds on getting your website done. But I bet all of you have sat at home by candlelight cobbling together a homemade CV. Where is the sense in that? And yeah, everybody agreed. They're all like, yeah, that's pretty stupid, isn't it? Why would we spend thousands of pounds on our website when our CV and LinkedIn profile is more important and we've done that ourselves? You're right. Makes no sense. But, that's kind of what people have been brought up to do, isn't it? So that's what people do. Oh, we should all write our own CV, even though we're all rubbish at it and we have no idea what we're doing. Best we can do is go and do some Google searches and copy something we found on the internet. People just think that they should write their own CV. But I guarantee you, I reckon about 10% of the population now gets their CV professionally written. We reckon there's between 50 and 100 people applying for each and every job. So between 5 and 10 of every person that's applying for a job has a professionally written CV. So these are the guys you're up against. Food for thought, isn't it, really? Okay, good. Oh, crikey, sorry, this is where I went a little bit mad with my PowerPoint animation. This slide always catches me out, so we'll just quickly let it do its thing. It's like a damn helicopter. Come on, go, done. Sorry about that. You're probably all feeling slightly nauseous now having watched that. Right, we talked about search engine optimizing your CV, didn't we? This is all about key skills. So if I go back to the Get Started CV here, where we have a slightly briefer professional summary, we've still got a key skills section. We've got this on the other CV as well. But if you think about it, there are two sides to recruitment. There's the human side, and then there's the machine. Now, we've not quite got to Terminator yet. We're not going to have to send Arnie out to get us a job, but there's still a human side, a non-human side to recruitment, because somewhere along the line, someone's doing keyword searches on a database, or they're doing they're using applicant tracking software, or maybe your CV's on a job board somewhere. Somebody's going to be looking for keywords. And those keywords need to be on the CV. So this is what this section's all about. You put the keywords in this section, and what that does is it gets your CV further up the keyword rankings, of course. If you want to be technical about it, and this is one of the little scientific things we look at, you're always taught to write a CV in active tense. So you would never say management of a team of 10. That's passive tense. You would say managed a team of 10. Hopefully the difference is obvious. When you say managed a team of 10, it's something that you did. If you say management of a team of 10, it's just something that happened. However, if I was searching for somebody with management skills, I would be searching on the word management. So therefore, this section needs to be written in passive tense. Okay, so we're going to go back to the presentation now. If anybody's not seeing the slides, it's pretty much guaranteed that that's going to be down to your internet connection. Also, people who are still using Windows XP. Windows XP is like pretty archaic now as an operating system, and nobody builds software now to necessarily work for Windows XP. We actually pay a premium so that the server that our webinar platform works off tries to iron out the difficulties with Windows XP, but sometimes Windows XP doesn't work perfectly. But anyway, hopefully most people are fine. So as I said, it's a menu of all your skills. It helps to search engine optimize your CV. And you might want to put stuff in like this. You know, if you're in accountancy, you might put stuff like this, and it's just really a list of all your key skills. Here's a really interesting statistic I found the other day, which I love. 92% of recruiters and hiring managers make their shortlisting decisions on the contents of your CV alone. Now that might not have registered, so I'm going to say it again. 92% of recruiters and hiring managers make their shortlisting decisions based on the contents of your CV alone. So they're not making shortlisting decisions based on some kind of osmotic force. They're not telepathic, and there's no higher being in the sky telling them how great you are. What I mean by this is that I know a lot of people, not just customers, but friends, family, who sit there after a few glasses of wine saying, I'm bloody good at what I do. Why isn't the phone ringing? And then I'm like, well, how would anybody know you're bloody good at what you do? Okay, well, I've got a CV. So does your CV tell everybody that you're bloody good, or is it just a list of jobs with a few bullet points underneath? It's a list of jobs with a few bullet points underneath. Do any of those bullet points tell people the benefits that you've delivered or the achievements that you've had? Well, maybe a couple of bullet points, but not many. Okay, so how the heck are they going to know that you're good? I suppose they're not. Yes, exactly. So shut up and drink some more wine and go and sort your CV out. Yeah, there you go. But 92% of recruiters and hiring managers make their shortlisting decision based on the contents of your CV. So your CV is absolutely critical. If your CV isn't great and it doesn't tell people how good you are, you're not going to get interviews, full stop. There's another statistic. 85% of those people, once they've shortlisted you, will then go and check out your LinkedIn profile. So if you've got a good CV and a rubbish LinkedIn profile, then you're blowing yourself out of the water again. You know, I can't criticize anybody. For about 2 months, my LinkedIn profile was like name and like my job titles, and that was it. Because I didn't have time. I was too busy to fill it out. But everybody that was looking at my LinkedIn profile was probably thinking, well, lazy bugger couldn't be bothered to fill out his LinkedIn profile. And I realized this when I realized how many people were viewing my profile. You know, I went to a business meeting and then I realized that person had gone and checked me out on LinkedIn before meeting me. That's business behavior now. So you better make sure your CV and your LinkedIn profile is spot on. 85% of people that will put you on their shortlist will then go and check you out on LinkedIn. Okay, good. Right, career highlights. Let's go to the professional level CV this time. So that's this bit here, career highlights. So you should be looking at the CV now. This is the stories or the case studies that we've been talking about. People in my world talk about this and they say, well, look, you know, actually, let me just go down a bit. There we go. Achievements. So this job here, this is my current job as managing director and lead consultant of our company. I've got an achievement section here. If I was to lift this section out of here, if I was to lift this section here, move it all the way up here, and plonk it here on page 1, well, that would be fine. But the problem is, these are just 2-3 liners. So they don't have an awful lot of context around them. And it's that context that's missing that means they wouldn't work if we lifted them onto page 1. So anybody with a key achievement section that are just 2-3 liners, you're on the right lines, but they don't work. Because we don't know who you did it for, when in your career you did it, in what capacity you did it, why you did it, how you did it. We know what the result was because hopefully you got that bit right. But the problem is there's not enough context. So everybody in my world have always said, don't put achievements on page 1. But we got to thinking, it's a pretty good idea to have achievements on page 1 because they're the most important thing. So how do we get around it? So what we did was we started working on case studies. So career highlights are basically your 3 biggest and best case studies or your 3 biggest and best achievements presented as case studies on page 1. Now, word of warning, if you're not able to write these properly and effectively and nicely, don't bother because you'll just make them look like a pig's ear and they'll destroy the CV. But if you can write them well, they work fantastic. We use a little formula called STAR, situation, task, actions, and result. So the situation is the problem. So let's have a look at this. This is something from my career. A long time ago now, I worked for this American car hire company, and they sent me down to Brighton to transform a business they'd just bought. So Enterprise Rent-A-Car acquired this unprofitable competitor in the south of England that required transformation. Basically, it had gone bust. What was my task? Well, I was appointed as operations manager to rebrand the business, embed the enterprise business model, and drive profitability. So how did I do it? What were my actions? Well, I performed a top-to-bottom review of the business. That's exited, by the way, not excited. I exited underperforming staff. I recruited a new team. I trained them, oversaw an office refurb, introduced radical changes to their commercial model, so basically brought in a 7-day-per-week operation. Great for business, terrible for my social life. And in fact, I'm pretty certain that that was the beginning of the end with my girlfriend at the time. I think she just got fed up with me working and decided that was that. So, and I led all business development activity. And the result is I succeeded in rebranding the business and achieving a 10K per month profit within 6 months. Situation, task, actions, and result. And you can basically write a case study about anything. I could write a case study about popping upstairs to clean my teeth. But you want to be writing case studies about really meaty projects or really good achievements, things you've done that have really made a difference, and put them on page 1 of the CV like we've just discussed. Okay, good stuff. Okay, smashing. So let's move on. Oh, this is another nice little statistic here. A lot of people are saying to me that, yeah, my CV could be better, but it's just a tough market, isn't it? There's a recession, there's not many jobs around. Did some research on this as part of a business plan we were putting together for another business, and there are 2 million live jobs. There were 2 million live jobs in the UK in 2012. And there'll be more than that in 2013. 2 million live jobs. That's a lot of jobs. So there are jobs out there. There's just quite a lot of competition for them. So what you're going to make sure is that you put yourself in the best possible position. As I said earlier, 10% of the people that you'll be competing with will have a professionally prepared CV. So for every 100 people that applies for a job, that's 10. Or if only 50 people apply, still 5 of them are going to have one. So if you've got a badly made, cobbled together homemade CV that you've done by candlelight, based on some advice you'd found written on the internet, written by someone who doesn't know anything about CV writing, then it's going to be tough, isn't it? Okay, good. So a word of caution. If your examples are weak, and we're still on the career highlights here, it highlights failure. So you've got to get them right. You've got to choose the right examples. They've got to be relevant and targeted. That's really important. They must be quantifiable. And you've got to find the KPI. I helped a guy the other day. I don't write so many CVs myself now, but I was helping a guy who'd been struggling a bit with the process. And he was telling me about turning around an underperforming IT team. And I was saying to him, well, what was the result of that? And he couldn't get there, and he was saying, well, everything was better, everybody was happy, or I don't know. And I'm like, well, look, think about it. What does your IT team perform against? What's the KPI here? Oh, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well, look, surely you've got an SLA with the business. So you will have negotiated the IT department is a service providing department. It provides a service to the rest of the business. So you'll have negotiated a service level agreement. You will have said to the business, we'll make sure that we provide you with a IT service that gives you this amount of uptime, this amount of availability, da-da-da-da-da. We'll respond to your support tickets in this period of time. We'll resolve your problems within this period of time, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, yeah, that's exactly what I do. So, okay, so your SLA, what percentage compliance did you have with your SLA before you started turning it around? Oh, well, about 75%. And then when you finished, what was it? Oh, about 95%. Okay, there's the KPI. There's the result. You took that department from performing at about 75% of what it should be to 95% of what it should be within 6 months. So that's a pretty strong achievement. He would have never got there on his own. I had to help with that. And again, that's what we're really good at. That's why people pay us to do their CVs for them. We're not a glorified typing service. People don't employ us to, because they don't know how to use Word or they're illiterate. They employ us because they know that we can get the best content out of them, and we know what content we should be talking about in the CV. Just in case anybody is wondering, our client base is not the people we've just talked about. It's usually savvy go-getters who understand that their CV is probably the most important document they'll ever own, maybe alongside their passport. I mean, gosh, guys, how many hours a day do we all spend at work? 7, 8, 9? I know I spend 10 hours a day at work sometimes. In fact, today I probably spent 11 hours at work. That's our job. We spend lots of hours at work. Of course, when you're out of work, it's 0. But when you get a job, you're going to be spending a lot of time in that job. So getting a job, and the job we get, is very, very, very important. There is one thing standing in your way of getting the job. Well, we could argue 2 things. Number 1 is your CV. Number 2 is your LinkedIn profile. And you could say your interview technique. So it's really important that you get this stuff right. Okay, good. Let's move on. Let's have a look at the career history here. The career history, a little bit more straightforward, but it isn't just a list of bullet points, and that's where a lot of people go wrong. They just put a list of, well, I worked here between these dates, and this was my job title, and here's a load of stuff I did, in no particular order, really random. And that's not going to work. It's all about the information architecture. It's about the flow of information. It's about, if you want to be fancy pants, aligning the information architecture with the cognitive processes that the recruiter is going through as they're reading your CV. So we all know it should be in reverse chronological order, and you should start on page 1. So if we go to this CV here, you'll notice that the first job is here, bottom of page 1. If it was on page 2, what's going to happen is quite a lot of people, and I've done some research using eye tracking software, they'll go here, so your name, they'll read the first part of your exec summary, and then they'll just skim down to your most recent job. So if your most recent job is on page 2, well, we're on page 2 now. So we're, in web terms, we're below the fold. So we're on page 2. You know what? It's quite a lot of effort, especially when you've got RSI, to scroll back up to page 1. Basically, once people are on page 2, they ain't going to go back to page 1. So all this great stuff on page 1 is going to go amiss. So you've got to start your career history on page 1, because then they're still on page 1, and they'll probably go back and read the rest of page 1 before they go to page 2. Hopefully that makes sense. So start it on page 1. And put it in reverse chronological order. First thing you should do is describe your employer. You might know that your employer, we did this the other day, we had a guy worked for a company which is basically like an ERP provider. I've never heard of them before. I've heard of SAP, I've heard of Oracle, I hadn't heard of these guys. So I'm thinking he works for this piddly little company, but actually they've got like 6,000 employees worldwide and a turnover of about 785 million quid. I'm like, oh, crikey, I didn't see that coming. You're actually a much better candidate than I thought you were. It means a lot. Having a description of your employer is important. Then you need a summary of the role. What I mean by that is, in a nutshell, this is my job. And that's critical, because what it does is it brings the rest of that section into context. I'm a big believer on context. You'll probably gather that by now. If you're a managerial level person, structure of your team. If I know that you manage 20 people and that you've got 4 direct reports, 2 of them are branch managers and one of them's a business analyst and the other one's something else. Pretty rubbish example I just gave there, but at least I can then picture that person's world in my head. I can almost see a little organogram, and it helps me to understand who they manage and what their world looks like, again bringing context. We talked about KPIs earlier. How is your role measured? If I understand how your role's measured, I understand your role much better. Then you can have the old duties and responsibilities, nothing wrong with that, they need to be in there. And then achievements and more achievements and more achievements. If you left a job after a short space of time, please put in a reason for leaving. Otherwise, it will be assumed you either didn't pass your probation or you were sacked for poor performance. So if you left for any other reason, explain why. Take that doubt away. And this might be, if you were doing a role summary, it might be something like this. And if you were describing the structure of your team, it might be something like that. So I'll just let you read that quickly whilst I take a quick sip. Okay, great. Great. So let's move on a slide. So we're going to have a quick popcorn break. I call it a popcorn break because I'm getting on a bit now. When I was a wee nipper, and me mum and dad, as I used to call them, being a northern boy, used to take me to the pictures. It wasn't the cinema then. We hadn't been Americanized then. It was the pictures, not the cinema. So you used to go to the pictures, and halfway through the film, the curtains would come across, and the popcorn lady would come round with the little wooden tray round her neck, with popcorn and fizzy pop and ice cream and that sort of stuff. So we're going to have a popcorn break. Everybody asks me at the end, okay, explain what you do. So I'm going to tell you now because it's easier. What do we do? Well, the first thing is we create CVs that significantly increase interviews. Absolutely. I will put my professional reputation on the line. I do 2 or 3 of these webinars a week. I do a lot of public speaking for lots of high-profile organizations like the ACCA, the Chartered Institute of Legal Executives, the Professional Contractors Group. You know, lots of high-profile organizations use me as their resident expert. I couldn't sit here talking to you guys about our service if it was rubbish, because I would just lose all credibility. So I'll put my professional reputation on the line that anybody who buys our service, it will work. And if it doesn't, you ring me up, we talk about it. And if need be, we'll just give you your money back. So the first thing you're going to do, if you buy our service, we're going to match you up with a senior level person. Could be an ex-MD, could be an ex-IT director, could be an ex-HR manager, could be somebody from a leadership coaching background, could be a certified CV writer. It's going to be someone senior who knows your world. And they're going to speak to you for about 2 hours over the telephone, or Skype if you need it to be on Skype. First thing we're going to do is discuss and sanitize your career direction. We're going to help define your value proposition. You remember the value proposition from earlier? I'm going to talk about your go-to-market strategy and try and get all that stuff right. All those value-added skills we talked about, we're going to help draw them out and make sure that we pick ones that are aligned with your marketplace. Then we're going to talk through your achievements and case studies. We're going to write them for you, of course, but we're going to help quantify them. That's really, really important. I'm going to write your CV pretty much from scratch, all with this aim of maximizing your marketability to employers. And I'm sure you will, because we've still got lots of good stuff to come. But if you stick around to the end, I'm going to offer you £125 worth of free services and discounts from our services, just as a thank you for listening to my dulcet Yorkshire tones this evening. Okay, good. So that's what we call our professional level service. We're going to move on now. We're going to talk about some more really good stuff. So the earlier career. Now, this is this bit here on the CV. I hope you're following me here. This bit here. It's tucked away. Basically, if you're looking for permanent jobs, anything more than 8 to 10 years ago, no one cares about. If you're a contractor, anything more than 5, 6 years ago, nobody cares about. So once you get to that point, you start tucking it away. It needs to be in there, but not in any detail, unless your more recent career history has been a bit of a dud and some of the more or some of the stuff from further back is more impressive. Then we've got to take a view and maybe bend the rules. But as a general rule, the last 8 to 10 years is more important. However, don't list more than 4 jobs, because no one's going to read more than 4 jobs unless you're a contractor. Everything else gets tucked away here. So that's the earlier career. I think that's pretty straightforward. We probably don't need to waste too much time on that. So 8 to 10 years or 4 jobs maximum. Put the dates, months, name of employer and your job title. Contractors and interims, you've got a completely different style of CV. What you do is you expand out the career highlights section and turn the CV into a portfolio of case studies that you can reorder depending on the role you're applying for. And then you turn the earlier career section into what I call a career chronology, where you list your entire career in the same way we did for the earlier career. Okay, good. Now this is an interesting one. Qualifications, CPD, or continuous professional development, or training courses. Everybody always asks me, shall I include training courses in my CV? Well, we all know that you should have your qualifications and your education. They should definitely go in there. Certifications, of course. But you should also put training courses in there. They really do add value. Even if it was just a half-day train the trainer course or something like that, put it in there. You don't need to put your university or your school name unless it was a red brick uni or a really high-profile school. Don't need the dates, because that tells people how old you are, which might not be in your favor. So it might look like something like this. I did put the name of my university in there, but I shouldn't have bothered. Nobody's going to be terribly impressed by Anglia Ruskin University. Do put your grades on your degree if you've got a degree, because otherwise people will assume you've got a third. Okay, personal details. Everybody asks me, why don't you put this section at the start? Think of it this way. If you were reading an advert in a glossy magazine, and the top of the advert was the name of the company, the next line was their email address, the next line was a telephone number, the next line was their company registration, the next line was their address, would you read that advert? Of course you wouldn't. It defeats all marketing logic. Anybody who's into marketing and copywriting will tell you that you put the call to action at the end. What we do is we recommend you have the telephone numbers at the top. Let's go back to the Get Started CV and show you that. So you'll see they're at the top. That's where recruiters are used to seeing them, so put them at the top. But clear white space underneath your name, so the first thing you read is this. Same on the professional level CV, exactly the same. There and there. Clear white space, first thing you read is this. And that follows marketing principles. So put the personal details at the back, other than the telephone numbers. Put your address on the CV, but only if you're not putting it on a... If you're sending it to a recruiter, fine, put your address on there. But if it's going to go on a job board or a public forum, just put where you reside. Email needs to be on there. I think it's okay to put the email at the top if you really want to. Driving license, what your mobility is. Where in the world will you work? Are you security cleared? What languages do you speak? What's your eligibility to work in the country that you're looking for jobs? I just dropped in a little bit of feedback. I dropped this in right at the last minute. And if you'll just indulge me to be slightly salesy, but I love this. This was somebody that emailed us right at the back end of May. And I really liked it. They described our process. This process has been very eye-opening for me and helped me understand what I have achieved over the years, where I should be focusing on in the future, and has helped me realize my worth to the next organization. After nearly 7 years in the same company, these things have slipped to the back of my mind. I will thoroughly recommend your services to my friends and colleagues, as it is time, effort, and money well spent. The reason I said that is really to highlight that our service isn't just about writing the CV. It's about all this, focusing what people should be focusing on, helping them to get the right strategy going forwards, and kind of eking out all the right information. Good. Okay. So just some general points now. I talked earlier about using active tense, and you should do that. Say managed, delivered, developed, led. They're all active words, active tense, powerful words. Use them. And use a tight writing style. So what you can do is you can drop little words, like little adjoining words. So you don't need an and at and the everywhere. You can drop some of those words where appropriate. And that's what we call tight writing. Third person means that you don't use I and my, or what are they? They're pronouns, aren't they? I and my. You can drop those pronouns, subjective pronouns, I think they're called. But you can drop them and write it as if someone's writing. Okay, personal details. Everybody asks me, why don't you put this section at the start? Think of it this way. If you were reading an advert in a glossy magazine, and the top of the advert was the name of the company, the next line was their email address, the next line was a telephone number, the next line was their company registration, the next line was their address, would you read that advert? Of course you wouldn't. It defeats all marketing logic. Anybody who's into marketing and copywriting will tell you that you put the call to action at the end. What we do is we recommend you have the telephone numbers at the top. Let's go back to the Get Started CV and show you that. So you'll see they're at the top. That's where recruiters are used to seeing them, so put them at the top. But clear white space underneath your name, so the first thing you read is this. Same on the professional level CV, exactly the same. There and there. Clear white space, first thing you read is this. And that follows marketing principles. So put the personal details at the back, other than the telephone numbers. Put your address on the CV, but only if you're not putting it on if you're sending it to a recruiter, fine, put your address on there. But if it's going to go on a job board or a public forum, just put where you reside. Email needs to be on there. I think it's okay to put the email at the top if you really want to. Driving license, what your mobility is. Where in the world will you work? Are you security cleared? What languages do you speak? What's your eligibility to work in the country that you're looking for jobs? I just dropped in a little bit of feedback. I dropped this in right at the last minute. And if you'll just indulge me to be slightly salesy, but I love this. This was somebody that emailed us right at the back end of May. And I really liked it. They described our process. This process has been very eye-opening for me and helped me understand what I have achieved over the years, where I should be focusing on in the future, and has helped me realize my worth to the next organization. After nearly 7 years in the same company, these things have slipped to the back of my mind. I will thoroughly recommend your services to my friends and colleagues, as it is time, effort, and money well spent. The reason I said that is really to highlight that our service isn't just about writing the CV. It's about all this, focusing what people should be focusing on, helping them to get the right strategy going forwards, and kind of eking out all the right information. Good. Okay. So just some general points now. I talked earlier about using active tense, and you should do that. Say managed, delivered, developed, led. They're all active words, active tense, powerful words. Use them. And use a tight writing style. So what you can do is you can drop little words, like little adjoining words. So you don't need an and at and the everywhere. You can drop some of those words where appropriate. And that's what we call tight writing. Third person means that you don't use I and my, or what are they? They're pronouns, aren't they? I and my. You can drop those pronouns, subjective pronouns, I think they're called. But you can drop them and write it as if someone's writing about you, but not using your name. But if you can't write effectively in the third person, I would rather see a well-written first-person CV than a badly written third-person CV. Obvious thing, but get your spelling and formatting right. And it's funny actually, because I see lots of CVs, and it astonishes me. Some CVs I read, the first half's in Calibri, then all of a sudden it's in Times New Roman, and then there's a bit in Arial, and then there's some bullet points sort of here, and then all of a sudden the bullet points are here, and it's like, gosh, I looked at a CV the other day, and this guy was a programmer, an IT programmer, and all the formatting all the way through his CV was inconsistent, and there was a couple of typos. I'm like, if that was code that you were writing for a piece of software, that piece of software wouldn't work, would it? Well, no, probably not. I'm like, okay, well, how do you think people are going to react to you when you have a CV like that? And he's like, oh, yeah, I didn't really look at it that way. I didn't think it was that important. I'm like, it's absolutely critical. So, yeah, absolutely. I've just been looking at the chat. I can see quite a few people have been talking about 2 pages. Guys, the 2-page thing is an urban myth. It's not a bad yardstick. I'm not anti 2 pages if your CV fits on 2 pages, but if it doesn't fit on 2 pages, it's fine to go on to a 3rd page. If you talk to any recruiter that knows their stuff, 3 pages is fine. In fact, there's a definite trend, an absolute definite trend that recruiters are now preferring and employers are now preferring longer CVs than they ever have. Because what people are finding is that really short CVs just don't give them enough information to make hiring decisions. So yeah, 2 pages is a good yardstick, but don't bust a gut. Front load the CV with all the good juicy stuff, and if it goes onto a 3rd page, that's absolutely fine. Unless somebody specifically tells you that it has to be at all costs 2 pages, then of course you need to do that. Okay, good stuff. Next slide. Recommendations. Okay, interesting point here, because if you go back in time, these have come in and out of fashion so many times it's untrue. You go back 6 or 7 years, they're a bit out of fashion, and then LinkedIn comes along. And all of a sudden, everybody likes recommendations. Now, I'm not talking about the generic ones your mate wrote. I'm talking about the unique, authentic, well-written ones written by a boss or a client. Those are the ones that are really powerful. But LinkedIn has a statistic that you're 85... No, they're not. It's not 85%. That's the other statistic. The statistic is you are 3 times more likely to be contacted about an opportunity through LinkedIn if you have recommendations on your profile. 3 times more likely. So it kind of stands to reason that they're a good thing to have on your CV. So I would recommend having a couple of really good recommendations at the back end of your CV. But there are definitely good ones and there are definitely bad ones. We have a bit of a sort of radar for what's good and what's bad. If I just go back to the professional level CV here, I am genuinely reading you these, not to blow my own trumpet, but to show you what a good one reads like. Richard Harris is like a dragon. He's like a business angel. He's an investor. He's both an executive and non-executive director on quite a few high-profile boards. This was when I used to write CVs personally before I had a team of guys who did it. But he said extremely impressed. Matt's vast industry experience enables him to expertly extract important skills and experience from your career. His writing talent allows him to transform this into keyword-rich CVs that are professional, relevant, and hard-hitting. He designs them to make your unique abilities and experience stand out from the crowd. I absolutely didn't ask Richard to write that, but I'm very grateful he did. Libby Calaby was one of my competitors. She actually ran Concept CVs. She wrote, "Matt is one of the few genuinely talented individuals left in this industry. Although we have worked as competitors, Matt is always full of great advice and opinion, and has created an established professional CV writing business that is truly based on integrity. I would have no hesitation in recommending Matt's work or his company to any future client." So, you know, I'm not reading those to blow my own trumpet at all, but you can't deny they're pretty powerful. And it really endorses me because it's from 2 credible people and they're well thought out. So if you can get something like that on your CV, they really do work well. And just in case anybody's in any doubt, LinkedIn is critical now. 85% of people that will consider you for a vacancy will go and check you out on LinkedIn. I'm going to offer you this special offer in a minute. But I just want you to think about something, because I talk to a lot of people about our services, and I get people who ring up and say, you know, great, fabulous. I get some people who say, oh gosh, I've seen services on the internet for 30 quid, you know, maybe you're a bit expensive. It's comparing apples and pears, you know. Think about what plumbers, electricians, gardeners, tree surgeons, even cleaners, think about what these guys charge for a day's work. I had a laugh with my marketing manager the other day. We saw an article, sheep shearers get paid £250 a day in high season. Yeah, I think it's genuinely accepted that any tradesperson, anybody that's doing a decent day's work, whether you're a cleaner or a CV writer, you charge about that for a day's work. We're no different, and it absolutely does take a day to write a CV and a LinkedIn profile for a client. So let's talk about LinkedIn now. So what is it? Well, LinkedIn is, the best way to describe it is, it's a bit like a professional version of Facebook, but it's not.
it's kind of like a professional networking site. It started off life as kind of like an area where you would keep all your business contacts, a little bit like the online version of having one of those old business card wallets. But it's got 230 million members worldwide now. But by default, what it's become is the pond that recruiters fish. So by virtue of that, that was by accident, but because of that, it's the place to be. If you're not on LinkedIn, you're cutting yourself off from a big chunk of the recruitment market. I've already talked about the 85% statistic, haven't I? But it really is critical. LinkedIn is so important now, and it took me a while. You know, I'm not a big networker. I'm not good at it. If I'm ever in a room with a load of people, I will stand in the corner reading the paper. I'm not very sociable. I don't know whether it's not because I'm a grumpy bugger or anything. I do enjoy the people's company. I'm just not a very good networker. So I'm not a big Facebooker or a tweeter. Even on LinkedIn, I'm a bit, sometimes don't do as much as I should. But I will tell you guys, it is absolutely critical if you're a job seeker.